Alright, so bonds are basically non-monetary financial assets. Now here are a few key terms that we need to keep in mind when we talk about bonds. Number one is the date of issue. So basically this is the date at which the bond is issued. Then we talk about face value. So the face value is the initial price of the bond which is set by the government. Then we have what is called the guaranteed profit. So guaranteed profit is basically the face value times the market interest rate at the date of issue. So this is important. It's the face value times the interest rate denoted by R at the date of issue. So it has to be the interest rate at the issue date. And then finally we have the maturity date. Now the maturity date is the date at which the bond matures, the bond expires. So basically you purchase a bond at the issue date at, say, a face value of 10. Let's make it 100, a face value of 100. Now let's say the guaranteed interest rate at that time is 5%. So the guaranteed profit is 5 per bond. So let's say the date of maturity is 5 years later. So 5 years later, you're going to take the bond back to the government. You're going to give the bond back to the government, and you're going to get your face value that you paid, that's 100, plus any guaranteed profit, that's 5% on the total value, total face value of the bonds that you purchased. Now, let's say the interest rates rise. So if interest rates rise, this means that the price of bonds falls, and if the price of bonds fall, this means that the demand for bonds rise. On the other hand, if the interest rates fell, then the price will rise and the demand will fall. So basically the guaranteed profit, the profits remains constant, which means that the selling price is determined by the market interest rate at the time of resale, right? So let's say, let's take an example. Let's say a bond is of $100, right? And the interest rate at the date of issue, let's call this interest rate not at the date of issue, is 5%. So your guaranteed profit is $5 per bond, right? Now let's say 2 years later you want to sell this bond to someone else, and the interest rate at that time is 10%, right? So the market price the selling price needs to be such that 10% of that selling price needs to give you the guaranteed profit. The guaranteed profit is still 5%, so the selling price of the bond will be 10% of 5. 10% of the selling price needs to be 5, which means that this is 50. So this is how you determine the selling price of the bond at the time of resale. Let's say if the interest rate had fallen to 2%, right? So the 2% of the selling price needs to be $5, which is the guaranteed profit. So the selling price will be $250, because 2% of $250 is $5. Hence, it's also proven that as interest rates rise, the price of bonds fall, and when prices fall, demand rises. On the other hand, if the interest rates fall, the price of the bonds rises, and the demand for the bonds fall. In the next video, we'll talk about what monetary and non-monetary assets are and what makes the demand for money.